Okay, guys, I just started recording the video. It doesn't tell me the time, but I was already at 1.5 gigs, and was still talking about Thundermaw Hellkite, which is the first thing I started talking about. So real quick, I'll just repeat the things I did in the video. I have the orange Nathan has been activated. If you know, not just don't like run a Google search and tell me, but if you happen to have had experience with like a cheap and reasonable video light that kind of is on the cooler side, so I don't look orange, let me know. And then I just remarked that it's funny, I'm also into photography and I have like the worst lighting ever, which is funny. I've said it before, but if you want to check out my photography, you can go to greatnate.com and there's a menu link at the top that says photography and it'll take you to my portfolio. I've been trying to think about a way to combine Magic the Gathering and photography for some kind of project. I don't know that there is one. Magic cards kind of look bad when they're zoomed in, so there's like a macro project. Anyway, okay, so we're talking about Jeskai Geist. I have a tournament this weekend. I don't know what to play. It's a toss-up between Jeskai Geist and Flash. I think that if you kind of... The real simplified thing is Geist is better at killing them than Jeskai Flash, and Jeskai Flash is better at disrupting. That's really what it's about. I think that the power level of Geist is higher, just in general, but there's also, you have a little bit less reactivity, and you can kind of just get in situations where, maybe you play a Geist, and then they play a Thought-Knot Seer and take your only removal, and suddenly the game kind of falls apart on you. That happens to this deck more than, that kind of thing happens more to this deck than the Flash deck. Okay, so a couple of things. Thundermaw Hellkite, he was always in the deck in the past. He came out, was trying to remember why, in the last like month or so, I've been like, man, I want to play Dragons again. But I was trying to remember why he came out, and it was basically just, he was really bad against Amulet Titan when that was a thing. He was bad against Grixis Twin when that was a thing. He was bad against Infect. He wasn't great against Dredge, although if he's in your deck, you can technically kind of win a game against Dredge by maybe trying to race them and then killing all their flyers with Hellkite and attacking, and they have no way to kill it, but it's kind of on a wing and a prayer, if you will. It's going to be difficult to set that situation up. And there's just a lot of mid-range decks. The Eldrazi decks are basically mid-range decks. They're the biggest mid-range decks. There's some Abzan out there. Thundermaw's really good against Abzan. The meta's slowed enough where I think that Hellkite's good. He's also good against Death Shadow. If you have a Geist and they have Death Shadows and Geist plus Hellkite is 9 damage. That's nearly half of somebody's starting life total. And I just think that Thundermaw, it just complements the deck so well. And if you're going to play Geist, it'd be nice to do it in which it's a meta in which you can include a Hellkite, because it's just kind of exactly what the deck wants to be doing. I don't know that I went 2 in the 75, but I haven't necessarily been unhappy with it so far. Thundermaw over Stormbreath. So there is situations where Stormbreath is better. The situation is one in which the enter the battlefield clause of Thundermaw Hellkite is irrelevant. In that, and the running white. In that specific situation, I think Thundermaw's better. On paper, Thundermaw's a better card. It does more for 5 mana. You get an additional power and toughness, and you get an ability that impacts the board. The reality is, an attrition matchup, say against like Abzan, if they have 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever it is Lingering Souls tokens on the battlefield, and maybe it's been a grindy game and you're on the back foot, they can just race your Stormbreath Dragon. And if you're playing Stormbreath Dragon and then just holding it back to block, 1/1s, you're not really getting much out of your mana investment. Thundermaw Hellkite has the ability to kill all the Lingering Souls tokens and then trade for a Path to Exile if they have one. If they don't, it kills them. But that's kind of what the matchup is about. Now you have gotten a solid 2 for 1. If you kill like 2 Lingering Souls tokens and they path it, you've gotten a 3 for 1 out of your Hellkite. That's what it's really about. I want to play Thundermaw Hellkite more than I want to play Stormbreath Dragon. If the meta was all like blue-white control or Jeskai control, I would consider Stormbreath Dragon, but it's not. So in even decks that, even decks like Soul Sisters or, black-white tokens or potentially even Eldrazi and taxes, or just death and taxes, like if they have Flicker Wisps, even if they have an answer for your Thundermaw Hellkite, those are attrition-based matchups, and that now you have to kind of operate as a control deck, kill a bunch of stuff, and Thundermaw probably kills one of their creatures, and if they kill it, well, you've 2-for-1 them, and you probably have more ways to gain card advantage in your deck than they do. So, want to run Thundermaw Hellkite. Okay, so a couple of other things about the deck. Spell Queller is it's fine. It's really the main reason that it's in here right now, and I've gone back and forth on it, is that quick half step back. I feel like one of the things I'm not great at in Magic is deciding when something is right, because I've been playing this deck for years and I still don't know all the time what's right. You know, I don't. Sometimes it's a meta thing. But I feel like I logic myself into one way sometimes, and then a few months later I logic myself back in another direction. There was one time when I swore off Spell Snare. Maybe it was a meta thing and I just don't realize it. Maybe it wasn't as good then. And then I found myself playing 2 later. There was a time when I swore that the only way to build the deck was to play 4 Restoration Angels, and then, you know, now I'm on like 2 Restos and 2 Cryptics, or 3 Restos and a Cryptic, which I guess that's never really changed. I've always like bounced around between some number of Cryptic Command and Restos in the deck, unless I was on 4 Restos. But yeah, it's hard for, you know, I'm bad at deciding like this is right and this is why. And I'm saying that because the 8 3-drops is basically where I'm at with that. The reason there's 8, so at one point in time, Jeskai Geist used to run a ton of 3-drops. Maybe it was 11. You ran 4 Geist, you ran 3 Electrolyze, and 3 Clicks. I kind of feel like that's a little clunky to me, but you definitely had a lot of things to do on 3. The reason, if you do them, the reason I have 8, I've been trying to get 8 3-drop threats in the deck is primarily, if you think about the way that you want this deck to play, on turn 1 you want to like kill something, or maybe ideally you want to kill something or bolt their face if they don't do anything. I mean, obviously there's some decks where you're like, okay, I'd love to get aggressive, but I know I need to be a control deck and I'm not going to bolt their face. But ideally you're doing something on 1. You're killing something, you're disrupting, or you're shooting them in the face. Then on turn 2, you're shooting them in the face again, or you're countering what they do with one of your counter spells. Or even against some decks, you're playing Snapcaster Mage. The idea is you kind of have something to do on every turn, whether it's being aggressive or being reactive. But in all situations, the idea is to try your best to play Geist of St. Traft on turn 3 on an empty board. And the reason is on your more like on the matchups where they have creatures to interact with you, the basic idea is if you play Geist onto an empty board, then you untap, you play your 4th land, you can path to exile their creature, their Kitchen Finks, their Tarmogoyf, whatever it is, and then hold up like Negate or Logic Knot or, you know, whatever. And the idea is that then you have your Geist on the battlefield and you can win the game that way. But, you know, you can only run so many Geists, right? But you then still have to think about, so what are you doing when you don't have Geist? Well, when you're not, I find in this deck, when you're not trying to turn the corner on turn 3, the deck begins to break down just a little bit, because now you're going into turns 4 and 5 without applying any pressure, and the deck's not necessarily set up to do that. I mean, you have Restoration Angels, and now, you know, in this version we have Thundermaw Hellkite, but it's not like you want to go into turn 4 and 5 and 6 with Cryptics and Snap Cryptics. I mean, you can build the deck that way, but that's not necessarily, I don't think that's really what you want to be doing. That isn't what Geist wants to do. Geist wants to end the game. And so because that's sort of like this mode that the deck operates in, I think you want to have enough 3s so that you can reliably turn the corner on turn 3. Now, maybe that doesn't necessarily mean Geist. Maybe you don't draw Geist, but you want to then, you know, end of turn on turn 3, click. And the thing is, if you run 4 Geist and 3 clicks, you just have a ton of legendary permanents, and there's times when click is just kind of terrible. He can't ever attack. They can't ever attack through Lingering Souls, stuff like that. But if you have 8, this is what I'm getting at. If you have 8 3-drops, if you do the hypergeometric distribution calculation, which I just use a calculator, you have it's like 74.8 or 74.2. You have a 75% chance to have 1 3-drop in your hand on turn 3 if you kept a 7-card hand. So you've seen 9 cards, you have a 75% to have a 3-drop. And since we're a deck in which we're thinking that it's built in such a way that we want to turn the corner on turn 3, I think if you're only like playing 6 and you're I think the percentage is 64%, you're just a little bit more than half, but less than 3/4. Are you going to actually be able to turn that corner? And so for that reason, I think that the right way to build the deck, and this is again going also back to what I said, which is I have trouble deciding this is right, but I think you want 8 3-drops because I think you want to turn the corner on turn 3, and these are just the best 3-drops to do that. One of the nice things about having Cuellar in the deck is it's not. I don't think it's as great in a Geist deck, but you do want to maintain some of the flash element. I guess some other cards that you could potentially look at are like Burmaz, but you really want the upside to be super high if you're going to tap out on 3. If you're going to tap out on 3 in Modern, when there's decks like, even you can still even get punished. There's not as many decks, I think, that are just like, oh, you're dead. Like, you could just die to Storm, or you could just die to Goryo's Vengeance. And against some of those decks, even though you'd love to have Goryo's, or you like Geist, an early Geist against Goryo's and not have them kill you, it might be enough of a liability where you need to board some out. But if you're going to tap out on 3, you need to have a serious upside. It needs to be like you're going to kill them pretty damn quickly. And Geist is the best card to do that. I think that Blade Splicer and Flash is not as good at doing that, but that's not really what that deck wants to do. That deck wants to play a Flash game. The Blade Splicers are more just kind of in the main as, you don't want to have all 4 in the side, and, there are some matchups where it's good, so it's fine to have them there. Cuellar, it's just, this means you don't have to tap out. It means that when you play against matchups where tapping out's really bad, you get to have a couple of more Flash creatures. It is a threat. It's totally fine to play it on 3 as just a threat, but there can be great situations in which, maybe they play something on 3 and you Cuellar it. And you start killing your opponent. You're turning the corner, just like we talked about. It's not as good in the mid-range matchups, but I think it's these are the best 3s. I don't think the ceiling of Burmaz is high enough to warrant tapping out, or Kitchen Finks necessarily. So, yeah, so that's one of the things about the deck. And then, Restoration, Cryptic Command, I always bounce between how many Restos, how many Cryptics. There was one point in time where I swore 4 Restos, and I can't remember if I said that in this video or not, but my logic is we're not necessarily a Cryptic Command deck. We want to turn the corner on 3, and we need to have... We want to draw cards that kill our opponent, let us attack with Geist. Restoration Angel and Geist, in more situations, I think, is probably better than Cryptic Command and Geist because it lets you attack with Geist but also contributes to your board. So, if I'm just kind of going on theory here, I think I want like 3 Restos and a Cryptic Command. Especially now if you're going to run Thundermaw Hellkite, I think you want more ways to just... you can potentially curve out with the deck, right? You can go like Geist into Resto into Thundermaw, and that's probably going to kill him. And so if you'll notice, there's 61 cards in the deck. I have a second Tectonic Edge. I don't know if I'm actually going to do that. It's just that the way the math works out is I think the second Tech Edge to make 61 cards improves the odds that I'll draw lands by just a little bit. I don't know if I'd actually do it in a tournament. We'll see. As far as the counters, I think a couple of Remand are great in Geist, but I think Remand is not very good right now. It's really looks terrible against cards like Death Shadow or Affinity. It's never been great against Jund. I'm sure it's fine against Tron at times, but sometimes against Tron, you're like, I really just need to kill the thing. I really need to counter that. I really don't want you to recast that next turn. It's obviously terrible against Ulamog. So yeah. Sorry, I kind of got a little distracted. I also, Helix and Bolt, they're great. They don't kill as much as they used to, which is why you see these Valor stances in the sideboard. Um, I think that, normally I'd say, okay, Valor stance is a little narrow. But maybe there's enough decks now where, and it's a shame, right? Like in Esper, you don't have to do this kind of thing because you get Fatal Push, so you get to kill lots of stuff. But Valor's stance right now, it's good against Abzan, it's good against Jund, it's good against Death Shadow, it's good against the two Eldrazi decks. So it's like, Jund, Abzan, Death Shadow, Eldrazi number 1, Eldrazi number 2. There's 5 more or less tier 1 decks in which Valor stance is totally fine against. And it is just more removal, which I don't like, but it does allow us to board out removal that sometimes is nothing but burn into actual removal in these attrition-based matchups. So I don't, you need to be like one of these and one of these, or two of these and none of these, or maybe even 2 and 1. I like the 1 of explosives just kind of as a catch-all. So obviously you can sometimes get nice 2-for-1s or 3-for-1s. I don't think I want to completely cut this. And then, okay, so I'm on 1 Spell Snare and only 3 Serum Visions, and that is mainly, it's like, okay, you got to cut something, and it's like, what is the Geist deck doing? And it's like, just on theory, does the Geist deck want 2 Spell Snares or 4 Helix? Or does it want 2 Spell Snares and 3 Helix, or does it want a Spell Snare, 1 Spell Snare and 4 Helix? And I think I think it wants the burn. Especially if you're going to run cards like Thundermaw. I think you want the cards that clear out blockers for Geist, and you want the cards that kill the opponent, and if you have to Suicide Geist, burn your opponent out. They're not as flexible all the time. They don't kill as many things now. But again, just kind of thinking like, what is the theory here? What are we trying to do with this deck? I think you want 4 ofs here. And I already talked about the Remands. I don't think they're great. Also, I'm kind of curious to see what you guys think. But for a while I was like on 2 Cryptics and 2 Restos. But I'm just going to go on the theory for now. As far as Serum Visions, I really love to run 4 Serum Visions. But, it is true. I think 4 Serum Visions is great. But it is true that sometimes there can be... There are times when it could be difficult to cast, right? Like, maybe you are like, okay, so I'm going to bolt your turn 1 Noble, and then I'm going to Helix your next play or counter it, and then I want to play Geist. And when do you have time to play Serum Visions in that? I still think you can totally play 4 Serum Visions. It's just that if you're like trying to like fit things that you like, so what I'm trying to do here is I know I want a Thunderball. I know I want 8. I know I want 8 3-drops. I know I want 4 bolts and 4 Helix and 4 Path. So I'm starting to run out of room. Well, Serum Visions is great, but there are times when maybe it's a bit awkward, and so maybe you can trim one. Spell Snare is great, but I think I don't necessarily want to cut out the more aggressive cards, so I'm trimming one. I would like to run 4 2-mana counters just to sort of make it more likely that I can play Geist to an empty board, but they don't kill my opponent, and you have to trim somewhere. Do I want to completely get rid of the Cryptic command? I don't think so, because the 1-up Cryptic is really good. Even 2 Cryptics have been great for me lately. I think I'm fine to have 1 in the side. There's matchups where they're great. So I guess on this decision, by the way, the 3 Resto, 4 Cryptic, I guess the right way to decide is just to go and look at what you'd want more often in most of the matchups. So that's kind of the deck. That's why the numbers are the way that they are. I don't know that it's right, but I have like reasonable reasons to back it up. I also think that in a Geist deck, you can reasonably cut a 4th Colonnade. I've run 2 in the past. I think the right number is 3 or 4. I did 2 for a while, and while it was true, the mana felt great because oftentimes you didn't have a problem with the land awkwardly coming into play. Tapped at a time. The meta is kind of grindy, and these help you grind. So I think I'm going to run 4 just because of that. As far as this 61st card, I don't know. I want more tech edges. Oh, I will say that about tech edge. I think tech edge is better than Ghost Quarter right now. The matchup, the format's a little slower. And it's nice to just be able to blow up lands, blow up man lands, potentially cut people off of colors. Ghost Quarter, I think, is better if there's a lot of Abzan company and you really just need to, like, oh my god, I can't even let you activate your Gavany Township once, or it's really bad for me. Or against Infect, if there's a lot of Infect out, in those situations I like Ghost Quarter more. But if the matchup's a little, if the meta's a little slower and a little more mid-rangey and a little more grindy, I like Tectonic Edge a lot better. And really in my list, I'd love to have two Tectonic Edges. But I'm not willing to cut, I'm not willing to cut the blue. I'm sorry, I'm not willing to, at least right now, like, I think I counted, well, let's just do it. We have 1 blue sources. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And if we were running 4 Sharon Visions equal 1.8 of a color. That would be 20.8. And you need to run like to rely to 90% have cryptic have triple blue on turn 4. You need 22 sources. So really, we're kind of, we're not quite at, it's 0.45 per Sharon Vision. So we're still a little under in colors where we need to be. I'd rather, for me, even if I was running, 24 lands, I would rather have the Tectonic Edge and accept the fact that I might, a small percentage of the time struggle with triple blue than just not have access to this effect at all. As far as the sideboard, the rest of the sideboard goes, I don't think we need this for Affinity, but I had a 1-of in the deck in some of the games that I've been playing, and I managed to beat Tron in a match because I won game 1 and game 2. I had an early Stony Silence, and it slowed them. They were eventually able to like assemble Tron and do stuff, but it slowed them down just enough, like by like a couple of turns, that I was able to like safely deploy Geist Saint Draft and begin attacking with counter magic up. So and you have like Lantern, you have Affinity, you have Tron. I have brought it in against Death and Taxes because it just makes all their creatures a lot worse, and if you have some counter magic in it, makes it better. I think there's enough like artifact stuff. It's fine to just kind of have this one Haymaker as a 1-of. I don't have any graveyard hate. It's just hard to cover everything. I could reasonably squeeze it in. I could cut this Thundermaw and put like a Surgical or maybe a Rest in Peace if I'm just gonna have it as a 1-of. But I think the reason I don't is the deck just doesn't necessarily, or maybe it could be a Relic, right? Maybe a Relic of Progenitus. The deck just doesn't interact with the graveyard all that well. And if Dredge is really prominent, you need a lot more than 1 Rest in Peace to reliably beat the deck. You need like 3 Rest in Peace and like a Rune Halo or 2. I mean, it's hard. So against the pure graveyard strategies, it's like we're kind of a dog anyway, and we have to really warp our sideboard in order to beat them. So I'm just kind of trying to ignore them for now. Ancestral Visions and Geist, it's kind of weird. Like every time I like have one in a Geist, I'm like, Geist wants to kill you really quickly, but Ancestral Visions wants to make the game go long and get value. However, I think that you're bringing it against your green-black matchups. You're there's a lot of matchups I think which you're like, I have to be the control deck here, and because I have to be the control deck, I'm gonna trim like 2 Geist of Saint Draft. And so then I think it's fine to have Ancestral. Against Jund, you're probably not going to trim your Geist, but you know what the matchup's about, and you win Ancestral Visions. So even though it seems like Geist and Ancestral Visions are on different plans, I think it's fine. I already talked about Valor Stance, Ceremonious Rejection. I've talked about that in the past. The Dispels, the Negates, it's for combo. We're, interestingly enough, against like non-interactive, against like spell-based decks, we don't have as many counters, say, as like, we don't have 2 Spell Snare, we don't have the 2 Cryptics main, but the Quellars do a very nice counter spell impression. So in a way, we do, like, one thing I do like about Quellar is in matchups where you want counter spells, they do sort of serve a dual purpose. They are counter spells and they are threats. And so sometimes it's like if you have a 60 card deck, it almost feels like the to having 2 Quellars in makes it a 62 card deck. So against like, matchups where we want, disruption, we have the one of Spell Snare. We now have 2 negates in the 75, 2 Logic Knots, 2 Clicks, 2 Quellars, 2 Cryptics, and 2 Dispel. So I think that's not bad. That's pretty okay. And then even again in some of those matchups, it's fine to bring in Ancestral Visions because if you get it early, you can just sort of have some counters in your hand and sit on the back of that. So if I was going to play this weekend, if I was going to play Jeskai Geist, I think I'd just give this a whirl. Again, I struggle saying this is best and this is why, but this is what I would roll, I think. The second Thundermaw is just like I said, the format is kind of mid-rangey. I think format's good in mid-rangey matchups, and I also would want to bring it in against decks where you're just like, I just need to try to kill you as quickly as possible, like Tron. It's like, obviously you want your negates and your counter spells, but you're also trying to kind of burn them out and be aggressive, and Thundermaw's really good at that. So I would also probably bring it in against like Valakut decks, right? So, all right, that's it for Geist. I've been playing this a little bit more frequently recently, so I have a little bit more to say about it. There's also a really good chance that I run Jeskai Flash. In the Flash deck, I think the counters are better. So I want the other Serum Visions. I don't know that I want this. Let's see, what have I done here? Oh, there's 61 cards and only 24 lands because I was like, I just want the 4th Lightning Helix. I'm just gonna play it. I don't care. I'm just playing it. Just putting it in there. I don't care. I run 61 cards. I don't know if that's true or not. I lost a matchup against Burn a while back, and I was just like feeling super salty. The Geist deck is better against Burn. I don't think I'd really change much out in the main outside of just cutting this Helix maybe. I have a Sulfur Falls. I think that there is plenty of blue and white in the deck. And again, I talked about Tech Edge. So I've talked about there's not too much to say here. I don't think I'm gonna run Ruined Halo. It's been fine, but it's just been okay. There have been some again, I've cast it a couple times against Valakut and still lost, mainly because they were like, okay, well, I can't kill with Valakut, but I'm going to kill everything that you play with my... They drew a Valakut and had it, and they were like, I'm going to kill all your creatures with my Valakut triggers. So I don't... Eventually, they just killed me with the Titan, so I don't know how good it really... I mean, it's fine, right? But I'm not going to run it right now. Sideboard is pretty darn similar. And this deck's a bit better in grinding matchups. You have your Blade Splicers, which are natural 2-for-1s. If you ever blink them with Restoration Angel, sometimes it could just be GG. For the same reasons as in the other deck, I want a Valorous stance in the main, but we're also a little bit more countery, so I don't want to cut the Dispels, I don't want to cut the Negate, I don't want to cut this or this or this or these or this. And I want to run the one of these, so I only have so much room, and I don't want to cut this, so I'm making it a Valorous stance because of the Eldrazi decks and such. I could, in theory, maybe cut the Cryptic. Maybe I don't necessarily need 3 Cryptics. In fact, I for a second Valorous stance, if I feel like Valorous stance is really that good right now. But I don't know. I have to decide again what I want the Cryptic against. The reason I put the 3rd Cryptic in there was for things like I wanted it against Tron. I wanted it against decks like just any decks where you're grinding, Abzan, Jund. I think it's good against it's fine against Eldrazi too. If they don't have Cryptic Command, if they don't have Cavern of Souls, it's great. But it's also good, if you have some, like a Click and a Quellar and an Angel or something like that. It's really good to tap and draw, attack them. Snapcaster Mage, tap and draw, attack them, stuff like that. So I might just run this again if I was going to play Flash. I don't know what I'm going to play. I still feel like I'm no closer to the decision for this weekend, but obviously it's going to be one of these 2 decks. Next week, I'm going to play something. I don't know what. Maybe I'll do a tournament report. I still never did one for the tournament a couple weeks ago. All right, I think I've said enough, and this video was supposed to be short, and then I was supposed to pack, and I haven't even done that yet, so I'm like way behind. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like my videos, you know what to do. If you don't, let me know how you think I can improve in the comments, and I will see you guys soon. Bye. Oh, not bye. Draw well and smash face.